Hello, good morning. So we are now on part 8 of Andrew and the Magic Giveash ometer. And today's, just straighten that up, make it better, that's more central. And today's chapter is called The Gospel According to Miles Davis. Now, I'd just like you to know that I'm happy for you to access these for free. They're all in order across all the different social medias, and it's one of the reasons why I'm putting it out there, so people can get this visual auditory experience. But if you do want the book, it is available on Amazon, $7.99 for a paperback, or you can get a Amazon Kindle copy for $4.99, and if you've got Kindle Unlimited, it's free. So it's out there, and it looks a bit like this. So this chapter is called The Gospel According to Miles Davis. I needed to make another plan. For me, the only way I was going to get a decent job, let alone a career, was to create one, to invent one. I'm absolutely certain that lots of the ADHD brotherhood and sisterhood have had to do the same thing. Think about all those oddball creative people with their unusually eccentric niches carved out of their brains. So let's look at the facts as I saw them at the time. I had an unusual brain that didn't fit in with the expectations of any job or even school I had ever attended. I was really easy bored. I was always getting into trouble at work. I was not averse to taking risks. I know I'll become a teacher. Actually, the original plan was something quite different. I wanted to teach English as an additional language, or in other words, more truthful words, I wanted to travel the world and get someone else to pay for it. A plan with no drawbacks. So I trotted to the local careers office and shared my plan with their resident house hippie, in the hope that somewhere under all that greasy hair, he had a shortcut to me achieving that plan. But he had other ideas. Why don't you become a primary school teacher? He's off his rocker was the first thing that crossed my mind. And hear the man out was the second. So we talked about the money, the promotion prospects, the decent pension and the 6 weeks off in the summer, etc. And that's when I stopped him. I've got no qualifications, I confessed. You don't need any, he replied. So here's the idea. I could go to college for 1 year and study 10 or 11 subjects at once, and apparently they counted as A-levels. I was pretty sure I could manage this, having studied French and Italian in night school the previous year. Then you nip over to teacher training college, and for 3 or 4 years, and boom, you've got everything but the chalk. Enter the impulsive ADHD. All right, I said with minimal thought. After a few weeks, I was in Nottinghamshire, living in a massive student house and studying hard. The college itself was a musical instrument making college and was full of arty bohemians who listened to jazz and shared conversations about philosophy, art and poetry. This is where I discovered John Coltrane and Miles Davis. The house could not have been better. There were 8 French, 2 Italians, a German and me, and the house language was French. Brilliant. Very much communal living. If you cooked for everyone, so big family meals every night and plenty of wine. I had a job at the local wine shop with generous discounts. Sometimes even Ray the postman used to come for supper. He used to bring big cigars with him. God bless you, Ray. Great fun. This, of course, went on for a year, and with heavy heart I said goodbye to my friends from overseas. And this, of course, went on for over a year, and with heavy heart I said goodbye to my friends from overseas, and changed my name from my teenage abbreviation of Andy back to Andrew. I was becoming respectable. I got myself a place at Bishop Grosseteste College, now Bishop Grosseteste University. What a place this was, really straight. No Chet Baker or Thelonious Monk there, and definitely no musicians. Well, not my kind anyway. I found myself living with a religious education student from the Salvation Army who had 0 life skills and no hygiene skills, personal or otherwise, and a graphic design student who was nice enough bloke but was a bit neurotic. To be honest, he was one of those people who was a bit of a target for practical jokes, and I generally never missed the opportunity to wind him up. One time in particular, I remember I talked Sally Army Pal to come with me into his room, where we both put on his clothes and sat watching his telly. When he came home from college, we told him that he was in the wrong room and he needed to piss off. Another time, he was out at the pub with his mates. He had a tendency to come home very tipsy, so while he was out, I replaced his light switch with a dummy capped off plate so that he couldn't turn off the lights. However, my absolute favourite was one night after he'd gone to bed, I took all of the furniture out of the lounge and stacked it up in front of his bedroom door. I just couldn't help it. The situation was so boring and I needed something to stimulate me. You see, ADHD will do that to you. If nothing goes on, we'll create something. Ultimately, these two moved on and other people moved in, but the tedium remained a constant. Having said that, I did around this time meet and fall in love with the woman who went on to be the mother of my 4 fabulous children. That was definitely not tedious. I'm going to read you another chapter. This is called Out of the Frying Pan and. So I graduated from Bishop Grosseteste 3 days before the birth of my first child. A beautiful little girl was born. All of a sudden, I was a parent, and that wonderful journey of being daddy began. We had 3 children in 3 years, then 6 years after the birth of our third, had another. Despite my university shenanigans off timetable, I'd been a good student and pocketed a respectable 2-1 honours degree and a studying reference. I was really excited to start my new career. My first school post was as a Year 2-3 teacher for a head teacher that made David Brent look a top-end professional. This man had so many indiscretions going on that I felt like I was sitting on a ticking time bomb. So I challenged him regularly. My moral compass, however, was seriously misguided, and pretty soon he made it clear that he had all the power and he made no secret of the fact that he wanted me out. So I went. Not too long afterwards, he was investigated by the local authority and unceremoniously chucked out with the minimum of honourable discharge. Nevertheless, this was not a great start to my teaching career. Following this little mishap and false start to my life, I found myself in a different school. And guess what? Yes, you get it. Another very dodgy head teacher. This one was different though. She was a serial bully. Her strategy was to drag down the staff she didn't like as far as she could and try to destroy them. Everything about them, their mental health, their careers, even their family life. I never worked out what her motivation and what motivated her to behave like this. As far as I could tell, she had some excellent staff around her. One of my favourite characters on TV is Saul Goodman from Better Call Saul. He thinks on a different level to neurotypical people, and you never see where his next plan is coming from. I would love to know if the writers intended him to be an ADHD character. I sometimes think every ADHD person has a bit of Saul in them, and this is how I tapped into my inner Saul, although he didn't yet exist. I went all out into gathering information that this head teacher had been amassing about me. Every time I went past the photocopier, I checked it. You'd be amazed what people leave on photocopiers. All of the computers were networked and password free, so all I had to do was search up my name and anything she'd written about me on her laptop would come up. You would not believe the stuff I found. Anyway, ultimately, I put together a dossier about the bullying I was the brunt of, and I called in the union and the local authority for a meeting with me and the bully. You should have been there. The evidence against her was damning. The local authority kept trying to stop the meeting, but I stood fast. I was going to have my moment. Following the meeting, the union asked if they could have a copy of the dossier I'd made to use as an example of good practice, and I was made a regional caseworker for the NAS UWT. Honestly, I don't take pleasure in people suffering, but I also did not enjoy being bullied. The union advised me to leave there and then, and I took a paid break up until Christmas, which I used to study my autism master's degree. Sadly, the work I had done was not enough to get rid of her yet, and she caused more unhappiness for more people after I'd gone. But similarly to the previous school, long after I left, she was eventually investigated, and again, another corrupt head teacher was unceremoniously removed from the premises, and her crimes were blabbed all over the internet. Well, she certainly made my life a misery for a long time. A guy I knew once told me that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, I don't know about that, but what I do know is that you should never underestimate ADHD survival skills. Off I went into the sunset and got myself a new start to my education career and found a great post in a great school with a great head teacher. The majority of head teachers really are the most warm and caring human beings. It's just like Willy Wonka said, there are a few bad eggs. Right from the beginning of my teaching career, I was drawn to the different children, and as a result, I went to every autism training event that I could. I was transfixed by the thought processes of these children. Eventually, I secured a place on the Autism Masters course at the University of Birmingham. What an amazing experience that was. Imagine being in the bar and being able to have in-depth conversations with great minds such as Rita Jordan and Glynis Jones. Look them up. This was a game changer. I was all about the autism. I had plans. I was going to change the education system. I was going to make schools neurodiverse friendly for autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, all of it. Thank you for listening. It's really nice to see you. See you tomorrow.